to the Boropolis podcast. As always, I am joined with Nathan. And well, Nathan, if last week's podcast was slightly downbeat, then dear me, this one could be firmly on the floor in regards to any sort of mood, really. I think that would be the best way of putting it. Besides the football, have you had an all right weekend? I'm going to lean on the side of probably not given yesterday's result, but I mean, you might have got up to something fun, which wasn't Middlesbrough laid.
No, not really. It's been quite a quiet weekend for myself. Obviously, you're hoping that the highlight of that weekend is going to be going to the match and seeing your team put up a performance. But they did put up a performance yesterday, but it was just incredibly bad. So yeah, wasn't quite the weekend that I had planned, despite having quite a good week leading into the weekend and hoping that I'd end my week on a high with a Borough 3 points, but not. Instead, we just decided to completely capitulate and look like a National League side.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary, really. We could end the podcast, to be honest, right now after that little intro. But yeah, thankfully, we don't have to talk about the performance against Bristol City straight away because obviously there is another big talking point from the last week. And of course, we might as well get straight into it. And that is, of course, that Matt Crooks, everyone's favourite tree, looks to be on his way out of Middlesbrough. Come as somewhat of a shock, given that the transfer window, at least the European transfer window, slammed shut last week. And then really during the week, we got reports, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday, early on in the day, that there was a whole host of MLS clubs interested in Crooks. And then quite quickly after Michael Carrick's press conference, the club released a statement to say that he was travelling or due to travel to the USA to undergo a medical. And it looks really like it's all done and dusted. We're just awaiting official confirmation. Of course, we're recording this early afternoon on Sunday. So by the time this is out, it may well have been confirmed. But as I say, it seemingly is almost there. And I mean, it's quite a big blow because after losing Rodgers and very much being in the camp, both of us last week, we spoke that we were probably a little bit short in that forward area now. We've lost another player, and now it's very unlikely that we are going to replace Matt Crooks. Whatever your opinion of him, it's another option, and he would have got games between now and the end of the season. So I think a lot of people are sort of split on two sides between this, and probably one of those sides is the viewpoint of Crooks himself and the move in terms of what a good move it is for him. But then also you've got to look at it in a selfish manner in terms of the club's perspective and what it means for the remainder of this season, but also longer term in regards to the deal. So Nathan, sum up your thoughts. Somewhat of a surprise move for Matt Crooks, but obviously something that looks like it is definitely going to happen.
Yeah, I think I have sort of mixed feelings on this one. First of all, I think that if you just look at our January and how that went and not signing a player in the striker or forward department, we were already short, and this leaves us even later. Now, onto Crooks as a player, I think last summer when he was given a new deal, I think a lot of fans were happy with it because he's given us some really good moments over the last, well, throughout his Borough career, really. And a lot of people can sort of be blinded by that um, and sort of forget a little bit about the games where you can see that his ability is limited somewhat in that attacking midfield role, and some people will have thought in the last year or so that yeah, he's an option off the bench. He shouldn't ever really be getting a regular start for us in that position. And I'd be inclined to agree with that. I think that he'd be a player off the bench for you, like he was last year. Um, and for him, he probably doesn't want that. He wants to be playing at this stage of his career, and he's going to the MLS, and they're probably going to double his wages, what he's on here, which is obviously an incredible move for him in that sense. So I can see why he'd be pushing for the move from a financial standpoint. I think for us, I can understand why he's being allowed to leave, because he wouldn't be starting games. He probably wants the move himself, and it's an aging player with not a lot of resale value out the door for, I suppose, probably a minimal fee. I know it said significant on the Northern Echo, and then they've backtracked with that. And yeah, I always thought it'd be sort of little to nothing, really. But just on the sort of whole of his career at Borough, really sort of enjoyed watching him at times, but at times can be very frustrating to watch. Um, Obviously popped up with a load, and I mean a load, looking back, of really important goals. And I think what stands out to me as well as just the fan who travels quite regularly to away games and things like that, a lot of the games that he scored in I've been at. So I've really, really sort of enjoyed Matt Crooks for those moments that he's given me. Um, but yeah, a real gem of a bloke, and a player that has given us loads of moments over the last couple of years. I think if he'd have gone in January and you'd have been able to have the opportunity to sign a replacement, then there wouldn't be that much uproar, really, as much as there has been. But yeah, it's fallen into early February, just after the window's closed, after fans are already a little bit frustrated that we haven't signed a centre forward, and within the next couple of sort of days after the window's closed, you lose another player. I can see why the frustration is there, and it did sort of feel that at the end of January anyway, not signing a centre forward, that they'd already given up on the season, like we mentioned last week. And I can kind of understand the thinking that you're not going to overspend on players that are going to come in short term, and realistically, you're not going to go up this year because the teams in the top six are really, really good this year. The quality level from this year to last year's a completely different level. If you got in the playoff, you'd get battered over two legs by whoever it'd be. And that's just me being realistic. But yeah, can completely see the frustration. We've got to sit here for another 3 months until the season finishes, and talk about a side that looks quite far away from where we want them to be. Create a couple of chances, don't have anyone to put the chances away. We've got a centre forward playing on the right hand side who was quite comfortably the most prolific goal scorer at the football club, playing out wide. And yeah, we are really, really gonna probably struggle over the next couple of months talking about it. Because I'm already dreading the next sort of 40 minutes talking about yesterday's game. But yeah, Crooksy gone, can see why. Um, but yeah, I think I'll look back on him with fondness for the memories that he's given us over the last couple of years.
Yeah, yeah, I do somewhat echo what you've said. And look, if, and it's a big if, because we'll never be sort of privy to the actual fee in the end. There is a significant fee, and I don't really know what that would be for a player like Matt Crooks, maybe 3 or 4 million. And what also hasn't really been sort of picked up on by a lot of people is the fact that Rotherham have also got a sell-on clause as well. We have no idea and haven't seen any reports as to how much that is. So Rotherham are going to benefit from the deal. If it is, say, 3 or 4 million, then from a business standpoint, probably a good deal in terms of, as you said, a player with little to no resale value, and also a player that we bought into the club for a minimal fee, really. I think it was 1 million, potentially rising to 1.5. So I must say, credit to Neil Warnock on that, because at that time, and I'm sure everyone listening, and yourself included, Nathan, will remember, that summer was just an absolute mix and match job of, well, you can see we've put a bid in for that player, but also we know that that's a Neil Warnock signing. And without doubt, Matt Crooks was a Neil Warnock signing. So, yeah, he definitely spotted a player in there, and one that, say what you like about him, under every manager, yes, he's had spells out of the team, but he's always been used fairly regularly. And I think that's a testament to what a useful player he can be in the Championship. I think for me, I will look back at Matt Crooks probably most for that role on the right of the three in midfield under Wilder. I think he undoubtedly played his best football in that role. And although he will be remembered for all the important goals and moments, and not just that, but also the way he is off the pitch, I don't want to neglect some of the performances, like you say, that were frustrating, and he didn't just, it's not a case of Crooks has been fantastic every game and then they've sold him and it's like, well, what are they playing at? There's obviously limitations to his game, but especially under Chris Wilder on that role, as I said, on the right, linking up with Dijksteel and Isaiah Jones, Matt Crooks was very, very good. And I don't think that should be forgotten, really, because, I was told from someone connected to the club that when Wilder come in, Matt Crooks was one of the players in the team that he'd sort of marked as a potential player that could go on and play Premier League football for Middlesbrough. And obviously that hasn't worked out. Wilder didn't work out and all of that happened. But the big tree was playing at a really, really good level in that season. And he's been shifted round. And as I say, in the end, everyone's just going to look back with fondness. But in the short term, I'm not going to lie, and this might actually be an unpopular opinion, it doesn't really sit right with me. Probably from a club, well, not probably, definitely from a club perspective, I absolutely see why Matt Crooks would want to go and play in America. He's definitely will have bettered his money, and absolutely fair play to him. I've got no qualms that he probably wanted to go. And I also see the argument that if he did want to go, do you really want to keep him around as an unhappy player? But from the type of character he is, I have no doubts that had he have not been allowed to go, because of the situation we're in, he wouldn't have kicked up a fuss. And yes, I'm not making the case that he would have played every game, but I am making the case that we lost Rodgers, we didn't bring in a striker, we are playing with near enough 3 or 4 players across the front line at the moment that are near enough carbon copies of one another. No real sort of standout asset, all very much in the pocket players, which are neat and tidy, but don't really have that knack of goal scoring. Crooks offers you something very different. If you are chasing a game and you need a goal, he is apart from Marcus Forss, the one player in Middlesbrough squad that you'd want on the pitch. And also, it shouldn't be forgotten that Matt Crooks started against Chelsea in the second leg of the League Cup semi-final. Now, yes, there was injuries, and we still even had Rodgers at that stage. However, that to me isn't a player that, is not going to be useful between now and the end of the season. And he may well have gone in the summer, and it probably would have made sense then. But the frustration for me comes with the fact that after losing Rodgers and almost thinking, well, excuse me, they've accepted the fate for this season. But this just feels like we're now extra short. And after yesterday's performance, perhaps it's me being a little bit reactive to that result as well. But it just feels like with somewhat of a chance and not a huge chance, they've just gone, well, just forget about it this season. We'll have a go next season. And as much as we can go around the houses, and we did last podcast about the model and the strategy of the club going forward, I think as a fan, you're still entitled to be annoyed at that, because it's not like there's sort of 10 or so games to go. There's still a large chunk. And yeah, it just seems like that's that now. And I'm not saying that just because of Crooks, but yeah, it probably doesn't sit right with me. And I will say, I wish him all the best. He's been a great servant. As you say, an absolute diamond of a man. But yeah, I'm not going to lie, you can probably tell by the tone of my voice, I was really quite upset about it. And it leaves us in a position now where you've got Finn Azaz playing in that 10 role, who hasn't really managed to pull up any trees as of yet. And again, a couple of similar players who don't really give us anything else apart from being in the pocket players. And I guess it probably leads us quite nicely onto yesterday, Nathan. I mean, where do you start, really? The team, the start to the game, the glaringly obvious problems up front, the consistent injuries. I mean, I think probably the team selection, because I will say before we go into this game and what's gone wrong, there's no other manager that I'd want than Michael Carrick. I love everything about him and his character. But for me yesterday, he got it so wrong in regards to trying to shoehorn players into a system and not really, for want of a better word, having a bit of bottle to just drop someone out the team to play your best team.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I think you look at the back five, no real qualms about that. Obviously, people clamoring for Dieng to come back in. You don't necessarily know how fit he is. Okay, he was fit enough to make the bench, but I think it's all right to just leave Glover in there, despite his mistake last week. Your midfield two of Barlasser and O'Brien. I mean, like, okay, on the face of things, not so bad, but then you see your best midfielder in that position, Hackney, being played as a 10 when you have those two sat in his actual position. How about you play your best players in their best position? And if you're going to shoehorn someone else in, shoehorn a player who's not as good as your better players in that position. For the life of me, never understand that. Play your best players in the best position. And that leads on to McGree. He's been back a week. I genuinely, you can't make the case about jet lag or any of that bullshit. He's been back a week. So okay, if he's not pulling his weight in training, fine. But you'd have McGree in that side every day of the week, really, in the 10 or or on the left hand side as that left hand side 10, and then you'd shift Azaz in centrally. Force off the right, yeah, fine. Um, Again, still make the point. He's the most clinical player at the club, and he's been played out wide. But then again, who do you have to play off that right hand side anymore because Jones is injured, and you tried Greenwood there against Ipswich, and he might as well not have played. So Greenwood up front, fine because he put a shift in last week and did all right. But yeah, that midfield three were the problem, and they absolutely killed us in the first 15 minutes. Um, yeah, for the second time in a couple of weeks, we just allow a centre half to just drive forward through the middle of the pitch, just do whatever he liked. It was 0-9 last week, and they nearly created a chance from that last week. This time it was Dickey gets the ball and strides forward. No one wants to affect him at all. And okay, there's a little bit of good movement from their forward players, but with one pass from Dickey through our full midfield, Knight is goal side of Engel.
Engel switches off as well. I mean, there's
Yeah,
but to even be in on goal, you've got to play the pass through first, as you say. And for Dickey to literally just waltz through the centre of the Riverside pitch is inexcusable, really.
yeah. And Knight looks like he may be about to fluff it, and you hope that he does, but he does, in hindsight, incredibly well to sort of swivel, get round Glover and fire the shot in the near corner, 1-0, and was already regretting my choice to even come out yesterday afternoon and watch the match, and then to see them kick off. Initially, Barlasser gives the ball away straight from kick off, and then Hackney gives the ball away, trying to play a pass into O'Brien that's behind him. Um, I'd like to pick up on the fact that all three of our midfielders there, Hackney, O'Brien, and Barlas, are all stood in the same 5 yard space down that right hand side near the corner. Hackney gives the ball away to as he tries to pass it to O'Brien. James gets the ball and carries it forward. And I'm not joking, you may have seen because we sit in the same section. As soon as James picked the ball up, I started walking to the end of the row because it was I knew he'd score. It was absolutely typical. And yeah, lo and behold, as I'm on my way down the stairs, he's buried it in the bottom corner. And I just thought I'm gonna have another pint because this is absolutely brutal. So yeah, I think there was more of the West stand in the concourse than there was actually sat in the stand after 15 minutes. And after watching the game on the TV for maybe a 15-minute period, we kicked off after the second goal and Barlaser miscontrolled the ball again. Now at that stage, after already being unforgivable for the first 15 minutes, I'd have whipped him off and just changed system, shot Hackney straight into midfield, brought McGree on, and all of a sudden you're back to your naturally best side with natural players in their correct positions. Barlaser was kept on for the full 90 minutes yesterday. He genuinely put in one of the worst central midfield performances I think I've ever seen.
It
And
the first
Hackney
half,
wasn't too far behind.
yeah, yeah. The first half performance from Hayden Hackney and Dan Barlasser, both of which were. I never thought I would see this season individual performances worse as Engel at Sheffield Wednesday, and he was hooked at half time. And I think those two went very close, and if not bettered, in terms of how bad it was. Engel's performance in that first half at Hillsborough. And listen, it goes back to the accommodating players topic. And listen, Dan Barlasser has been somewhat of the whipping boy this season. And I do think that in terms of the level he was playing at, he has or had turned it round. However, in regards to turning it round, that wasn't turning it round to a level which made him undroppable. It was just better performances. And to, as you say, accommodate Hayden Hackney, who, in all fairness to him yesterday, who was really, by his standards, as poor as he has been probably since he come into the team. And I think this has been the case for a number of weeks now. But it comes back to him playing in that further forward role. It worked twice last season, worked with somewhat effect against Chelsea, but it's crystal clear to see that he just isn't comfortable in that position. Hayden Hackney is at his best in a deeper lying midfield role alongside, whether it be, even if it's with Barlaser, that wouldn't be my choice. It would be Johnny Howson when available, and Lewis O'Brien. I haven't really seen enough of him yet. I know previously, but in a Middlesbrough shirt, I'm basing this off. I haven't really seen enough of him yet in that sort of two in front of the back four. I don't even particularly think that that's his real strength in terms of his position. But regardless, Hayden Hackney is your best player in that role and has to be playing there. Dan Barlaser has not played at a level which is affecting the team in a net positive way enough to warrant playing our best player out of position. And yeah, I mean, the passing didn't help yesterday, did it, from either of those? And yeah, as I said earlier, I wouldn't want anyone else in charge of Middlesbrough. He's done so much good, but I looked at Carrick yesterday and I just thought you either need to make changes at half time or even perhaps earlier. And if you don't, then this is on you. And I hope he's learned from it. I really do. But I guess that we're going to have to wait to see if he has. But the story of yesterday for me is probably, yes, there was terrible individual performances, but again, it was more so on Carrick and that shoehorning players into positions topic and the lack of Riley McGree. Whether that's something deeper for non-footballing reasons, I have no idea. But after the start of the season, when he wasn't getting consistent starts, he eventually found his way into the team, was our best player for that period. Obviously picks up the injury and then goes to Australia. Unfortunate timing. I'm not sure whether he so happened to just be fit enough to then go off to the Asia Cup. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But regardless, Sammy Silvera come back into the team and featured against Sunderland last week, having been back, 24 hours? Yes, he didn't play in the game the day before. But Riley McGree, as you say, has had a week now. We don't see him on the training pitch, but if he's available, like Hackney, he should be in the team and he should be playing in his best position. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. This Hackney in a 10 experiment needs to stop. It worked twice last season when he had miles better players around him in that forward line. He had Akpom in there, Force in there, and Archer ahead of him, who are levels above what we have in those 10 and striking positions at this moment in time. So that freed up a load of space for him. But now, when he's in that team, he's probably our best player. And he's playing out position, so that he's going to be comfortably dealt with. But yeah, it probably should have been 3 before half time as well. Sam Bell got put through, and Glover made a good save. Okay, we did actually carve one chance open, and Azaz just played it into O'Leary. But yeah, you're hoping for some change at half time. Doesn't make any. In fact, I think Bristol City made something like 4 changes by the time we made one.
Yeah.
Utterly just poor. I mean, look, I understand that it's by no means any fan that makes a comment is not necessarily qualified at all more than Michael Carrick and Jonathan Woodgate to make decisions on the team. But I don't know how you can watch that first half yesterday and just think, oh yeah, boys, just yeah, you guys got us into this mess, so just pull us out of it. That can't be thought process, surely. You have to make changes. At least go for it slightly. We still just kept the same side and nothing really changed. I suppose we had a few more chances in that second half um yesterday than they did. I mean, I can't really remember them getting into our half in the second half. Um, but yeah, obviously Greenwood scores and it's offside. It looks marginal. But
Is on, to be honest, but I mean, it wouldn't have really mattered. I don't think. I know we
no,
all play a goal, but it didn't really feel like a team building up a head of steam at all, did it? Um,
no, it didn't. But it was actually a good finish from him on his left foot to bury it in the
was,
top corner.
was actually fair play to Sam Greenwood for that. Yeah, just back onto the topic again, and I'm probably going to sound like a broken record throughout this podcast, but frustrations are clear. When it comes to accommodating players, you see Azaz shifted out to the left, really ineffective, I thought, yesterday. But then when moved more centrally, looked slightly more promising. I don't think Azaz is probably the player that we, at the moment, that we thought he was going to be in regards to perhaps his ball carrying. I think we all thought that that was more of a strength, perhaps. Having watched him for Plymouth, maybe he's a little bit. I think he's more of a sort of eye of the needle type passer. And also, you saw some of those ridiculous finishes for Plymouth. He's obviously got an eye for a goal, but like most players, when they join Middlesbrough, he doesn't look convincing in front of goal, or even, I don't think he's really attempted any sort of longer range efforts at goal. But yeah, it's not just affecting not using our better players in their natural positions. You see Azaz, he looks uncomfortable out on that left. And yeah, there's no real net positive as to why players aren't playing in their preferred positions. And I actually understand the force situation at the moment because he's giving enough to the side from that right midfield role where he's contributing. Yes, I'd prefer him to play centrally. Yes, some of the chances that Greenwood gets, Marcus Force would bury them. However, as you say, you can't put Greenwood out on there. You can maybe make a case for McGree being there. He did that role last season when Aaron Ramsey was available to Michael Carrick. But at the moment, it's not the biggest problem because he's still contributing. And without Isaiah Jones, you don't have a natural right winger. So for me, yeah, I'd probably like to see it further down the line. But at the moment, it's just not really an option. But as for the rest of the team, and even the substitutions yesterday, I know Engel is somewhat at fault for the first goal, but I actually thought he was one of those, and this is probably an unpopular opinion as well, and even against Sunderland, I thought he had an okay game. Is there really any need to put Luke Thomas on? Is it just to justify the signing? I'm not sure. But for me, when he come on, did he look like he was going to offer more than what Engel was? Bear in mind, minutes beforehand, Engel had put a really good ball across the face of the goal that we nearly scored off. No.
Yeah, it just seems like he's making the left back changes for the sake of it, really. Constantly changing Engel at 70, 75 minutes for either Thomas or it was Bangura before that. And yeah, either Engel's got a gas tank that doesn't allow him to play a full 90 minutes or he just has to make that change because of I don't know. I honestly have no idea why he's having to make that change. Um, but yeah, a few of the changes are just strange, I suppose. Yeah, obviously O'Brien came off, and you can see why. Obviously, just coming back from injury. Um, but Silvera come on, and what a great finish it was for his goal. It summed up the game, how utterly pathetic. The ball goes all the way across the face of goal from Ayling. Azaz with a very less than convincing effort towards goal. I think he's just trying to get anything on it, really, side foot it with his left foot. And Silvera's trying to get out the way, and it comes off his back and somehow ends up in the back of the net. And I mean, there is something to celebrate, I suppose, that that goal keeps us in the top half. So
Yeah,
get
yeah.
in.
I must say, Nathan, I'll hold my hands up. I'd gone by that point. I was already on the bridge. Um, yeah, that's very unlike me, but it should. I guess that probably speaks volumes as to my levels of enthusiasm after that first half performance. But yeah, Nathan, I mean, we should probably move on because we can go around in circles and it's the same topics. But I guess the only thing that will sort it out really is some quite significant changes for the Preston game in midweek. And before we talk about Preston, because they're a very up and down team, and it speaks volumes the fact that they are ahead of us in the table, and they are at the moment 4 points better off than us at the moment, Nathan. Before we talk about Preston, what needs to happen on during the week? What changes need to be made? And from what's available, I guess what I'm asking you is, what is our best team? Because at the moment, even if Michael Carrick knows it, he's not showing that he does.
Well, I'd have Dieng in goal. Now that he's back on the bench, Ayling at right back, Rav, Fry, Engel, Howson and Hackney. I mean, how painful that Johnny Howson's 35, 36-year-old, and he's still such a pivotal part of the team. No matter who we sign in central midfield, they don't touch him in terms of his level. I'd have Azaz in the 10. I'd have McGree on the left, Force on the right, and I'd probably have Greenwood up front again, just to press from the front. Um, Obviously, if you had injured players back, I'd probably have like Elath and Jones. Um, it'd be a toss up for who we actually went with up front. I mean, he'd probably play Lath instead of Force, knowing Carrick. But there you are. I think that that team would have had enough to win the game yesterday, and I think that it should have enough to beat teams in and around us like Preston. Um, but look, I've got absolutely no faith in Carrick to pick that team um, on Wednesday night. If he did, I'd be very surprised. And typically, we'd probably get beat 3-0 with that same side if he did pick it on Wednesday night. So that
Yeah,
goes to show my levels of enthusiasm at this moment in time.
yeah. I have seen the suggestion that Silvera perhaps could be an option off the right, which would allow Marcus Force to go more central. I'm not going to lie, I feel like that is just the complete sort of way in which some Imes football fans think in regards to, well, he hasn't played that often, so he's become better than what we actually know he is. Obviously, we saw he had a spell in the team around the Christmas period and was largely ineffective. In the majority of his substitute appearances, he's been largely ineffective. He's actually more effective off the left. And at the moment, if Riley McGree's available, is the only person that should be playing in that role off the left. So for me, that would be a non-starter. As you went with, I'd rather have Greenwood in there centrally. Obviously, Josh Coburn doesn't look like he's going to be available anytime soon, or I guess actually we did discuss it last podcast. Carrick has said he's had somewhat of a procedure, which is basically just keeping him available probably one in every 3 games at the moment. And that is just down to, without saying it, Carrick might as well have said, we have no one else. So we've kind of just got to have a 40% fit Josh Coburn from time to time as an option. And I think that just goes to show where we are in regards to forwards. Interestingly, Kieran Scott did discuss on the 12-man podcast that the free agent market is something that has been considered, that they wouldn't rule out. I'm not going to lie. The situation we're in now, depending on how far Latte-Lath is away, as a stopgap, I wouldn't be against someone coming in on a short-term deal. I think it is that desperate, to be honest. Options-wise, Dwight Gale, God, no. I've seen a few people mention Lucas João. I think he's a slightly better option, but you're still scraping the barrel. There's a couple of other names there. But realistically, would they be any worse in terms of just having a natural number 9 available? I don't actually think they would. So, yeah, I can't really see it happening, but it was interesting that it was mentioned. In regards to Preston, Nathan, as I say, they're 4 points ahead of us, but actually we showed, ironically, at the Riverside as to how poor we've been there, how bad Preston actually are, really.
Yeah, and they're still above us in the table. So again, it goes back to a conversation that we had weeks ago, talking about some of the sides in this division that are meant to have a bit about them, and evidently do in terms of the points total. Ipswich, Hull, West Brom, when we played them through Christmas, all came up the Riverside, all looked drab, and 2 of them beat us. And okay, yeah, we turned West Brom over, but these sides are all above us in the table and all looked just drab, if I'm honest. So yeah,
What does that mean, though, Nathan?
yeah, that's that. This is the point. If they're drab and we just rolled over and got beat, what does that make us? And this is where my frustration lies. We got beat yesterday by Bristol City, and by I suppose they are a relatively good side. They are quite similar to us, but they didn't have to get out second gear much yesterday, did they? They pressed us relatively well in the first half for the first half an hour, 35 minutes, score the 2 goals. And honestly, it felt like game done from minute 17 when the second goal went in. Um, so that is where we're at. And as mentioned earlier, that's where my frustration lies. The fact that we've got to watch another 3 months of this, and I can't see any signs of it changing. That we're just going to continuously walk into games, continue to be passive, play with no urgency. There's no zip in the passes. It's just sideways, backwards, measured, walk up the pitch, get towards the edge of their box. They'll sort of edge us out a little bit, and we'll probably knock it back into Fry, and then he'll knock it back to Glover, and it start again. And we don't create too much like we didn't yesterday. And we'll go to Preston on Wednesday. And yeah, as you mentioned, you said that they are a side that are bad based on what we did to them in November. Just ripped the game away from them in the first half at the Riverside, 3-0 up inside half an hour, 35 minutes, and it was game done. Well, in the last couple of games, they beat Bristol City at home. They went to Ellen Road and got beat in the last couple of minutes by a penalty. They drew with Millwall, beat Ipswich, and they went to Cardiff yesterday and won. And they have Emil Reese back. So there's at least one player who's scoring a goal against us. I don't have any faith going into Wednesday night. Um, it's not even me just as a typical pessimistic Borough fan. This actually comes from, well, why should I be confident to go there on Wednesday night and get a result? They've given me absolutely nothing yesterday to sort of go into this game with any confidence with. And then after Wednesday, we go to Leicester on Saturday. So that'll be one to look forward to as well.
Yeah, I mean, Leicester won again yesterday.
Shock.
Yeah. Getting players back from the Africa Cup of Nations now, have an abundance of options, have players better in near enough every position. They've made some okay teams in this division look extremely average. If we go to Leicester and play anywhere close to the level that we performed at yesterday, it could get really, really ugly.
Yeah, it really could. And you said that they have better players in near enough every position to us. No, in every position, they have better players than us. And as mentioned, if we go there and decide to even have an off 5 or 10 minutes on Saturday, we'll get absolutely picked apart. And yeah, as a fan that's going on Saturday, what a mug I am. But yeah, I'm really fearing the worst, and why wouldn't I be? I'll be fearing the worst if we go to Preston on Wednesday and win 5-0. So um, yeah, there's not a whole lot more I can say really. I think that anyone that's going there on Wednesday night, credit to you. Don't know how you're going anyway because it's Valentine's Day, but yeah, there's at the minute there's no real excuse to go and watch that. Last year there was when we had Sheffield United on Valentine's Day, and we looked like the second coming of Barcelona. But yeah, don't think I could think of much worse things to do than go and watch us at Preston on Wednesday night, performing in the manner that we have on Saturday, and yeah, with not a whole lot of options to change that side. Um, but it's all right though, because Carrick said it's not the end of the world.
Well, yeah, I think that's probably I would say, a good um, point to leave it on. It's not a good point to leave it on. It's a bad point to leave it on, really. But a good part to wrap up the podcast with, because quite honestly, for anyone listening, if you've got to this stage, fair enough, because I can't and don't want to talk about that ever again, and for much longer at all, really, this afternoon. So, if you are going to Deepdale with your partner, have a very romantic trip at Deepdale, I will say that. If we are 2 or 3 down, by all means, go and get yourself a halftime refreshment, maybe a pie or a pint, and enjoy Valentine's Day that way in the concourse, probably in the freezing cold. Yeah, that may be better than what is actually being displayed on the pitch. So yes, Nathan. I think that wraps us up. In fact, it definitely does. Usually, I'd ask if there's anything that I've missed, but to be honest, I'm just gonna not do that this week and just get it wrapped up as soon as possible. But yeah, dear God, if it gets any more negative next week, then something's gone horrifically wrong. So let's just cross everything that that's not the case. But if you have watched and listened to this point on YouTube or on audio platforms, credit to you and thank you. And I mean, if you're feeling in a generous mood, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, or even rate and review us on your podcast provider, because that would cheer us up a little bit. I mean, I know there's not really much to gain in regards to you gaining anything if you do that, but yeah, if you're feeling nice, it's in the build up to Valentine's Day, then why not? Yeah, I'm going to leave it there, Nathan. Thank you for your time. Thank you once again for those that have watched and listened. That has been another episode of the Boropolis podcast, and we will hopefully see you next week with a much more upbeat podcast.